sell my house. I don't believe in collectivism. I don't accept my destiny. I don't accept my fate. I don't accept that I'm a little cog in a machine and that the cards that I'm dealt with are going to remain like this forever. Today we're going to talk about some social justice comics, but what the theme of today is going to be is more of collective ideologies and how the individual doesn't really matter in these ideologies, how they view that the choices the individual makes aren't important, because at the end of the day the individual is just a little cog in a machine and nothing that the individual does is going to influence the grand scheme of things. Nothing that the individual decides is going to influence his destiny, and this is what these ideologies believe. And you can see this in this comic, which is about social justice, and they are going to compare, I guess, the privilege, of at least what they consider to be privilege, between a person who grows up in a wealthy family and a person who grows up poor family. Now, the person who grows up in the wealthy family is going to become a great person, right? A wealthy person, without having to put any effort, according to them. It's just the luck of the dice. While the poor person, no matter how much she is going to try, and no matter how much she is going to try to improve herself, she is not going to be able to do so given the dice and the cards that she has been given. So, let's start reading this comic. And by the way, you will notice that these comics are very similar to the ones where you would have a message about Jesus. There would be a comic book with Jesus and whatnot, and it would be to reinforce the person's belief into Christianity. And these are operating in a very similar fashion. They are meant to reinforce the person's belief into social justice. So apparently Richard's parents are doing okay, while Paula's parents are doing not so much. I guess they want to say that Paula, in this case, was being dealt a bad hand, because as we get to see, Richard's house is warm and dry, his shelves are full of books, and his fridge is full of food, while Paula's house is full of people and not much else. It's damp and noisy and she keeps getting sick. And this is a reality, right? People are not born equal. They are not to blame for the hands that they are dealt. Up till here, I do agree that this isn't because of anything Paula or Richard decided, but this is all objective, right? And what do I mean by this? Well, indeed, it does seem that Paula has been dealt a bad hand because her house is full of people and damp and noisy and she keeps getting sick. There are other people who live in a homeless shelter, so they are doing far worse than what Paula is doing. And there are people who are homeless altogether. They don't even have a shelter, and they are doing far worse than the people that are in the homeless shelter, right? So all of this is entirely objective, and there are people who are going to be doing far better than Richard. I mean, let's say the child of the Prince of Saudi Arabia is going to be doing far better than what Richard is doing. And then it's like the idea that somehow this is random, that this can't be controlled. Obviously, Paula's parents decided to have kids, right? And judging by the fact that her house is full of people, Paula's family decided to have a lot of kids, I assume. So there is someone for this. It's not completely random, completely out of the blue. While Richard's house is warm and dry, so I guess he is also a lonely child. And, his parents decided to have only one kid. And these are all about decisions. It's not the universe plotting that wants to keep Paula down, the imperialist post-colonism or whatever they call it. No, it's Paula's parents who decided to have a lot of kids while they are poor. Bad decision. What can I say? That doesn't mean that they shouldn't have kids, right? If they want to, they can. And then we get on and we see that Richard's parents will do anything for their baby. And they do encourage him, good boy, clever, right, as he does his homework. While Paula's parents are busy working 2 jobs, so they don't have a lot of time to spend with her. I mean, yeah, okay, you can be a parent that has 2 jobs. I mean, my parents were barely at home because we lived in a communist country and they were agriculturers back in the day, agricultural engineers. They would go from 7 a.m. and they would come home until 9 p.m. That's how you worked in a communist country. And they were barely at home. And I stood with my grandfathers. I got my education from my grandfathers, which were university professors, from my grandmother. You still leave the kid with someone, right? I mean, it's not like he's going to grow up himself. And even if the kid will grow up himself, again, that's their parents who wanted to have children, right? So somehow I don't see why I should blame Richard for having parents who take care of him. But I guess even if Richard's parents are rich, right? I suppose this comic says that they have a lot of time on their hands to spend with Richard, which again is not true. My father was raised by my grandparents, and my grandparents, as I said, were university professors at the University of Medicine. They barely had enough time to spend with him because they were at the hospital working, right? When they weren't teaching classes and they weren't teaching courses, they were at the hospital helping people. So just because it's a wealthy family doesn't mean that the parents will actually have time to spend with the kids so much. And just because the parents have 2 jobs doesn't mean they don't have free time like Saturday and Sunday to spend with the child. Or when they come home, I mean, you wanted a kid, now you need to spend some time with him. Even if you have 2 jobs, you're still going to have some time. And my question is just how many people are working 2 jobs? It's like the wife and the husband have 2 jobs. Is this a common occurrence? I mean, yeah, sure, you might find a few families that are like that, but it does seem quite weird that both of them have 2 jobs. Even in Romania, which is a poor country, that's something, wow, unheard of. So I guess you can see the bias towards this, right? It's like they're desperately trying to give Richards the best upstarting. Okay, so up till now, it's none of the children's fault, but we're going to go deeper and we're going to see when it starts being personal responsibility. Because up till now, the individual doesn't have any responsibility whatsoever, right? It's not your fault that your parents aren't around. Let's be honest. Richard goes to a great school, well-resourced, good kids, and his teachers love their job. So he is being sent to one of the private schools, while at Paula's school, the class sizes are large, the school is underfunded, and her teachers are tired, stretched thin from the stress. Oh man, I need a new job. I've been to one of these schools, by the way. I have been to one of these horrible schools that are large, underfunded. The teachers, they weren't that excited. But there were students, like myself, who were motivated to study. Do you know why? Because my parents at home were telling me, look, we're really poor. You really need to study. This is your way out of poverty. And I would look around myself and I would see a lot of rich kids who could afford shit that I couldn't. And I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be able to have a computer. I managed to purchase a computer quite late. All of my friends had computers until I managed to get one. I was in a very poor family, right? And my parents kept encouraging me, look, you need to study. You have to do this. And yeah, despite the fact that I had teachers who didn't give a shit, I did study by myself. When I got home, I started studying. So this idea that if you go to a bad school, you can't study is horseshit, right? And you don't need your parents to spend like their entire day with you to give you this advice. And honestly, you don't even need your parents to give you this advice. It's common sense. It's common knowledge. You will hear it from other kids who do have their parents telling them this. It's like, look, mate, you need to study. So this is now starting to become about personal choice. Right? Paula doesn't study. She is having fun while she's at school. She doesn't care about her academic teachings. So it's her fault from now on. You can't blame her parents or her situation. It's entirely her fault. And Richard, despite going to a good school, he still has to study. You can't be like Richard and not give a fuck. And just because you're at a good school, you're going to get good grades. That's not how it works, right? He still has to study. It's still personal choice. Like Richard, if he doesn't study right now, he's going to fall behind. He is going to end up like Paula. And then we're like, so maybe we can see why the expectations set for Richard might be slightly different than those set for Paula. And it's like B+, oh dear, we need to get you another tutor. While for Paula, it's like B, hey, not bad. This is absolutely false. I mean, at least in Romania, I don't know how it is in other countries. But for me, it seemed that the poor kids were actually scolded more for getting a bad grade. And the reason is that their parents were desperate. They really wanted their child to get out of poverty, right? And they would encourage their children to study well because they couldn't afford a tutor. While the people who were rich were pretty much going like, oh, well, you know, you got a bad grade. That doesn't matter because they had the safety net, the financial safety net of allowing them to get a B. But there's also the thing that the tutor, right? Nowadays, we're in 2016, there's plenty of teachers on YouTube, like math teachers and physics teachers and whatever the fuck you want, who are really gifted and they're really trying to explain to people the lesson that they don't understand at school. So you can get self-taught. This is not an excuse anymore. This shit is, again, personal responsibility. While I was at med school, I had to do biochemistry in the first year. And I sucked at chemistry in school, right? I didn't know any chemistry, and the fact that I did law school in between also made me forget everything that I knew about chemistry, even the little bits that I knew. And I had to go on YouTube, and I did find a lot of chemistry lessons, a lot of teachers that were interested in teaching people about chemistry and whatnot. So I got myself up to speed. I didn't get my parents to hire a tutor. I didn't try to cheat my way or, get an advantage that other people didn't have. No, I just went on YouTube. Again, personal responsibility. And you don't need your parents to tell you, oh, by the way, you got a B+, oh, that's not good. No, you need to motivate yourself. You need to want to become better. Again, this personal responsibility, completely Paula's fault. And then you get that over the years, all these differences, parents paying for university while juggling work and polytech, still getting in debt. A lot of European countries, I don't know, maybe this is an American thing, but a lot of European countries do have this affirmative action where if you get good grades, you will get into a state-sponsored scholarship so you can do a university. And this is another reason why her parents wouldn't say, oh wow, a B, not so bad. They would say, no, you need to get an A. You need to get an A to get one of those state-sponsored scholarships so you can get in a university, right? So maybe this is the American system, I don't know. But for an European system, this doesn't work. And even if you don't get into university, there are still jobs and other things which are very well paid. I mean, in Romania, for instance, a lot of people don't put emphasis on becoming an electrician, right? An electrician is really well paid. It's not a respectable job in my country. But while I have a law degree and I don't have anything to do with it because I can't find a job, a guy who knows how to fix the lighting and, you call him when you have an electrical problem, he is making loads of cash and he is doing far well than I did when I finished law school, right? And I bet that person, like a plumber who you have to call when your toilet gets clogged and he comes and asks you for like $100 or whatnot to unclog the toilet, right? He is doing far more cash than what someone who chose to do gender studies or psychology studies or what the fuck not, right? So he is going to earn more. And it's another thing. It's like the personal choice of the career you want to be. So in Europe, you do have the universities that are sponsored by the states and you can go to one of them if you don't have the cash. And if this wouldn't be an option in America, there are still other jobs which aren't as respectable, that they aren't as good, I guess, but they still offer quite a bit of money, right? They still get you out of poverty. Then let's see what else. So they start to add up to build into something bigger. I have friends working there. I'll have a word and get you an internship. Thanks, Dad. While the poor father is like, you should be finishing your studies, not looking after me. And the girl is like, Dad, you are sick. So I guess this is about nepotism. And yeah, this is a problem in every single society. I don't know a society in which nepotism isn't an issue. Even in communist Romania, nepotism was much more powerful than it is now in capitalist countries. So yeah, I don't agree with nepotism, but it is a reality, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with poverty or whatnot. I mean, you can be, let's say, a janitor at a hospital, and you can actually know a doctor really well. You're friends with him. You talk in your lunch break or whatnot, and you talk to the doctor and you say, look, I have a child who finishes university. Do you know a place where he can get a job? And the doctor goes like, yeah, sure, we can help you out, Bill, you're a good guy, blah blah blah, you're always here working hard, and sure, I'm going to take care of your kid who finished med school. That actually happens, at least in my country. I don't know in yours. And then we go down and we see like, yep, the loan is approved, congratulations, and look, we just can't help you, maybe try ease finance. So I guess the bank doesn't want to give a loan to this lady because she is poor, while they do want to give a loan to this gentleman. And again, it's like, well, understanding reality. It's the idea that you can't afford a loan. Maybe you shouldn't do the university you want to do. I know it's hard shit. That's the reality. If you studied harder and you'd have gotten A pluses, maybe you could have gotten into a scholarship or whatnot. But since you chose not to study as hard and neglect your studies, then Right. But also, like, notice the fact that Richard can also make the bad decision, right? Richard is getting a loan. Maybe he gets a loan to do gender studies, right? And this would be a bad decision for Richard. Because all of the comics so far is pretty much saying that the only reason Richard is going to be famous is because the roll of the dice that he got, right? So he was in a good family. He doesn't get sick. He manages to have the best support. And, like, it's none of his decisions. It's not that he actually has to study. It's not that he actually has to make good decisions in which university he chooses. I mean, at this point, where Richard's dad is offering him the job, Richard can be like, no, Dad, I want to get up on my own 2 feet. Or he can be like, fuck you, Dad. You know, I don't need your help. I want to do gender studies. I want to become a social justice activist, right? He could be like that. And despite of all the advantages that Richard has, he could end up in the gutter. The comic doesn't show that, right? It just shows that pretty much his life is settled from the moment he was born. And then it's like, then maybe Richard starts to believe that he deserves to be on top. That he did it all himself. Oh, you're Rogers boy, right? I've heard good things, keeping my eye on you. And maybe Paula starts to settle and begins to learn her place. Okay, you've got the job, but I'm watching you, sweetie. And this is horseshit, right? So again, all of the accomplishments that Richard did, because he studied, right? Because he worked his ass off in order to get straight A's. And, you know, of course he did have the support of his parents, but if he didn't study, even with the support of his parents, he wouldn't have made it. It's considered that he doesn't deserve to be on top, right? That none of this is his. And this is the collective ideology working, right? The individual doesn't matter. His personal choice don't matter. What matters is that he is privileged, period, right? He is privileged, he is a sick son of a bitch. While poor Paula is underprivileged, and nothing that she does can get her out of the privilege. And this is pretty much the end of the comic. And less whining, more hard work, I say. I'm sick of people asking for handouts. No one ever handed me anything on a plate. And yeah, because he actually got straight A's. It's hard to get straight A's. No one handed him the information in his head before the exam. He had to study for it. Well, again, Paula is going to say that, well, she really can't get out of this. Look, I was poor, right? I was broken, like to the point where my parents had to sell my house. I went out starving for several days. I started looking for jobs. I started making YouTube videos. I started taking risks. Going to the University of Medicine was a huge risk for me. I didn't know how I was going to pay it. I said, you know what, I'm going to start now and I'm going to see in the future what's going to happen. It paid off, right? Might have not paid off. Might have been bad. But, well, I guess because I don't believe in collectivism. I don't accept my destiny. I don't accept my fate. I don't accept that I'm a little cog in a machine and that the cards that I'm dealt with are going to remain like this forever. I think people can go from poverty to being wealthy and go back to poverty again. I do think people fluctuate between the middle class, upper class, and lower class.